6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All systems go.
You're listening to Sudbury News Talk.
I want to show you something.
Stand by.
On the morning shift.
Anything
Could happen.
Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift. I just unmuted my two guests just because they're going to be joining us any second. I don't want to forget to do that. Sorry about coming on a little bit late this morning. If you're joining us on CKLU, you might have wondered if the show was coming on, but due to a technical difficulty that happens and has happened before and will happen again, we just had a bit of a late start this morning. But the good news is that we're on, better late than never. And thanks for joining us. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, all that stuff on social media. We are on youtubelive.com, youtube.com/Sudbury News, facebook.com/Sudbury News. Catch us on both of those platforms. All right, there we go. That's okay. Speaking of technical difficulties, we have some... We have a new guest on this morning, and we're all just going to be getting used to the technology that is involved in the show, and that's okay. It's all a learning experience. So thanks for joining us. If you're joining us on the radio, again, we joined a little bit late, and YouTube, Facebook Live, but we will be covering all of the latest news over the weekend that just happened, along with some of the election coverage, just who's out there, what's going on. Bob Johnston, just to let everybody know, Bob Johnston, who's running for mayor, should be coming in the studio because he doesn't have the ability or doesn't want to, or whatever the reason is. He wants to come in the studio. He'll be here on Friday more than likely, so we'll have him live. And as we gear up for the election coming up very shortly on the 24th of October. So without further ado, I have with me two guest co-hosts today, and I'm glad to have them. The first is Nick Gervais. We've had her before. And Julia Setters, correct? Did I pronounce that correct, Julia?
Yeah.
Cool. So here we are. And,
Good morning.
Good morning. So to give everyone a background, Julia, who has been, part of the show, commenting and caught us, basically. First of all, introduce yourself, Julia. How about that? I won't do it for you. You just give the listeners and viewers a little bit of background and how you got here.
Okay. So my name is Julia. I'm from Hanmer, and I'm a stay-at-home mom. I have 3 children, and my spouse works all day long, and I have a lot of time on my hands, so I like to stay up to date on current events. And I like to find nuance because I realized a few years ago that a lot of media has been captured and have leanings one way or the other. And so I spend a lot of my time reading about various things to try to get different perspectives and try to find the middle ground and the nuance and try to inform the people in my life about what's going on in the world, because I realize that not everybody has the time to do what I do and parse out the truth. And so I have a passion for that now.
So what did you find out about, in terms of the show, what did you think about this show, how it stacks up to that particular way of thinking, the media, and how do you think it's covered on this show, and what attracted you to the show?
That's what drew me to this show. So I noticed it on my feed, and so I thought, well, I'll give it a shot and see. It was a nice way to wake up in the morning, just sort of get caught up on the day. And then as I started watching it more and more, I liked to hear the different perspectives between you and your other co-hosts. And I thought it was really, neat to see. Sometimes you would express an opinion on something, and then Billy would challenge that. And I think personally, my philosophy is that the only time we learn is when we're wrong. And so I think that when we're wrong, it's an opportunity for learning. It's not, it shouldn't be taken personally or anything like that. And I really liked that about this show. Not to say that you're wrong, but just if you were challenged, you didn't take it as a personal insult. And same with Billy. And it really, and Nick and everybody, nobody takes it as a personal insult to have their ideals challenged or their beliefs challenged. So then I just sort of fell in love with starting my day this way. It got my brain going every morning, made me think. And I often, when you would speak or Billy would speak, I would think to myself, like, what would I say if I was in this conversation? And now I'm in the conversation.
There you go. And I'm really glad that you are. And I'm glad you reached out and said, like if you need any help for the show, anything I can do, and then we had a Google Meet Friday, I believe, right after the show and got to know one another. And I said, well, hey, how do you see yourself, contributing and whatever? And you said, yeah, whenever you need me, I'm here. I said, how much time do you need? You said, oh, just enough time to do my hair and makeup, and I could be on.
Just have to put some eyebrows on and brush my hair. And I'm all in.
Yeah, that's true. You did say eyebrows. You didn't say makeup. You did say eyebrows. That's true. I have to acknowledge that. And so, so I appreciate that. And I appreciate the fact that you said, if Billy would challenge what I would say, and if he would, I could be wrong. Like, people can be wrong. I'm wrong often. I mean, I think that's the way we learn and grow. You do something, you try something, you're wrong. You redo it, or you realize maybe you could do something a different way or a better way, and you move on. And so, I don't mind being wrong. I'm wrong often.
I think oftentimes we're not as wrong as we think we are. There may be just little pieces or a little bit of context that we're missing, and we're mostly right, but need sometimes a little bit.
Sure, exactly. Even if we have 80% of something that we understand, there's usually there could be a 20% that we need to fill in. You were saying, Nick?
You only know what you know, and how are we supposed to know more? Is by learning more things.
And Nick has her little one with her this morning.
Yeah, we're kind of both under the weather here.
Yeah.
And hence why Julia's on the show, because I didn't know if I was going to be able to make it, because there's that wicked cold going around. It's like it's been almost 3 weeks that we're sick. But I guess when you're isolated for 2 years, your immune system needs a reboot. So it makes complete sense that people are dealing with it differently. But what I'm saying is, everyone gets so personally butthurt about opinions. 100 people can say something good, and then one person will say something negative, and then people will take it personally. But there's always a million different perspectives to look at a situation, and it's fun to talk about it. And then even for myself, I'm getting more educated in different areas, and this is the only way you can learn.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. And I just want to give a shout out to those that are jumping on here. Good morning, Pam. Yes, it is a cold Monday for sure. It's getting that fall, wet, cold weather. Good morning, David. Thanks for joining us. And good morning, Darren. Nice to have you here. And yes, Bob Johnston is on the docket to be on the show on Friday, so hopefully we'll have him. I heard him on the news on CBC this morning talking about if he got into the mayor's chair, he would totally do an audit, not only of the finances of the city, but jobs too. Like if there's any unnecessary jobs in City Hall. What do you guys think of that? Yeah.
I think a big audit has to get done. I think a lot of people have lost complete trust with the city, and a lot of people think that the city is completely corrupt. And I think that's when I was thinking of an audit, I was not just thinking a budget audit, a full-blown audit, because there's a bunch of positions that need to see if they are even in need.
Yeah. So that's a hard one, right? That would mean layoffs or whatever, people that are used to a job. And if they're, it's deemed that maybe it can be run efficient without that particular job. So there'd be some pain with it. But I think if someone is working a job and it's not needed, common sense would tell you why do we pay for that?
Most of the growth happens through pain. So there will be some people who are going to be uncomfortable, and there will be some type of pain. And who knows, if we could find more money then we could find these people and they could be first, choice to do this other project, because there's always new projects that are happening.
For sure. And I definitely love listening to CBC on the drive in, because again, I'm going to do this one day. I'm just going to record the whole morning show and all the news. And then that's going to be a show I'm going to do afterwards, is just question, because they don't question. They interview the guest tells them things. And I think, whoa, is that the way it is? And they just go on to the next question. And I'm like, they didn't even call them out on that fact that they said. Anyways, it's not real reporting as far as I'm concerned. It's just have the guest on and deliver information. And so as we look at,
there used to be a word for that, Aaron.
What's that?
There used to be called propaganda.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. And again, this is
when you're only just, given, you're spoon fed everything, and not given the opportunity to challenge.
So a good segue into this comment that was made. Natalie Labby, who's running for Ward 7, Cape Rel, Garson area kind of thing, and other geography. But she's been a great contributor to the show. And I also want to give a shout out to Nicole, saying good morning. She had a hater, I guess, coming on, because since she found the show, we had her on as a guest. We had a really great interview, 2 interviews actually, because the internet went out. And she's basically just explaining what the show is. She's saying, hey, there's a new show. They look at all different perspectives. They challenge things. They discuss things and whatever, and mainly focusing on local topics and local news. Sudbury News Talk, all right, in the morning. So we're really grateful for that, and she's been sharing it. And yes, good morning, Sarah. Thanks for joining us. So I guess on her Facebook page, and she messaged me, I was in Toronto on the weekend, and she messaged me and she said, ooh, you may want to look at this. I have a couple of haters. She didn't use that terminology. She just said, I have some people that are kind of saying some negative things about you, and I'm not sure if I want to leave it on my page or not. I'm not sure what to do right now, but you may want to go and comment to what they're saying. And if I could just show everyone one of the comments here, I'll just, I haven't even shared it yet. So hang on one second. Basically, this is what she's saying. Have you heard of Sudbury News? It's a relatively new local news talk program that is quickly gaining momentum and notoriety across the city. I did not know this, but wow, thanks. If that's what's happening, that's great. Hosted live every Monday morning between 7:30 and 8:30 on CKLU, 96.7 FM, and live and interactive on Facebook and YouTube. Listeners are able to comment, participate in the show in real time that focuses on local issues, including what's going on in City Hall, special projects and events, and local sports. It's such a cool concept, and one that more and more people are jumping on during their morning commute. I was their first ever interview covering this year's municipal election back at the end of August, and she explains how we had 2 parts and whatever because the internet went down. And she says she's running for Ward 7, and she gives some, there's 3,000 views online for their debate. And then she went on to say she enjoys being on with myself and Nick and Billy, because that's who interviewed her, us 3, over the 2 days. If you'd like to hear what we had to talk about. And then she shares the video of herself. Do yourself a favor and join the conversation. CKLU, Sudbury News Talk. You won't be disappointed. So I thought that was great. I was like, wow, thank you, Natalie. And she genuinely likes the show. And I know she's told us time and again, and she's on most days, basically commenting on things.
Where is there another show where we talk about local news and we have different people sharing different opinions about local news, and just instead of reading all these articles, we're just talking about it. It's just convenient. It's fun. There's personalities. There's different opinions. So of course, it's a great show.
Yeah. Well, and you would think that everyone would think that's great too, but apparently not so.
Not Mike Whitehouse.
So Mike Whitehouse says 99% of Sudbury News content is stolen from genuine professional news sources. I would politely suggest that if you want real local news, you get it straight from the source rather than filtered through an aggregator. So, so that was Mike Whitehouse in his point of view. But I'm grateful for that point of view at the same time. I don't, if that's his point of view, I think that's what this show is all about. It's about someone coming on and sharing, and I share that for that very reason. So I wouldn't think, whereas he says, don't watch it. Go to other news sources. Like, hey, if you want to listen to it and make up your own mind whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
But he says, don't watch it.
Right. Some people have different learning. People sometimes don't like to read articles. Some people don't even know how to read. So some people want to be involved and like to just listen to something in the background, like a talk show. This is what this is. So for someone who would just say, don't listen, it doesn't sound very inclusive.
No, exactly. What are your thoughts,
has he watched,
Julia?
or where did he formulate his opinion? Is it just, I don't know, did he formulate this opinion by watching, or just because he heard, or but it sounds like he doesn't really understand what the show itself is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think his criticisms would be valid if you didn't cite your sources, and if you didn't say right from the hop what the show was. If you misrepresented yourself and said, this is the news that I personally went out there and got, and I'm the one who dug up all these facts, and that's not anything that you're saying. What you've said is, this was shared by, Sudbury.com. This is their perspective on it. I'd like to unpack this a little bit. And would you like to listen to me unpack this? And here we are, and that's the show. So
you don't have to listen, right? Like, you don't have to watch. You don't have to listen.
The same way you're not forced to listen to The View. If you don't want to watch The View on TV, you don't want to listen to them unpack the news in their own curated way, then you don't have to. It's your choice.
And it is Sudbury News Talk, right? It's not like we're not saying that, and how can we? We're all volunteer. None of us on this broadcast today are paid in any way, shape, or form. It's all just citizens getting together and trying to have a discussion about what things are important with us. And then hopefully through that, maybe we can grassroots affect change in a positive way is really what my whole hopes for this was.
Miles put a comment, it's a personal opinion and it's good he doesn't make a personal attack. We should respect that.
Yeah, exactly.
And it gave us a topic to talk about.
Yep.
And it's a good topic to talk about because
for sure.
This is the reason why this show exists, actually, is because we've noticed that the news is only sharing a lot of the news is only sharing one-sided of opinions. And we're interested in talking about it. And that's actually why we share, and Aaron shares all these articles about local Sudbury, because this is what's happening in Sudbury, and then we talk about it.
I think also, though, I would call it a personal opinion if he wasn't outright lying. So, the news isn't stolen and taken from other journalists and misrepresented as your own journalism. So in that way, I think that, of course, everybody has the right to their personal opinion and to express that, but we also have a responsibility and an obligation to make sure that our opinion is informed. And so this opinion is not informed. And so for myself, I personally don't respect uninformed opinions. I'll have a conversation with anybody as long as they've taken the time to inform themselves. But when it comes to stuff like this just looks like someone blasting off about something that they haven't taken time to do their due diligence.
And you guys are basically spot on to what, I'm just going to share the screen again, of what Natalie responded to him. Oh, I'm just going to go solo.
I didn't read her response.
So her response is, so again, he says 99% of Sudbury News content is stolen. So we already kind of talked about that, and it is an incorrect statement. we share the news from the source. We show it on the screen, so you can't, and then people can then go to those sources and look it out for themselves. We're not, making our own news and then putting another news source logo on it and saying, that it's something that it's not. So it's stolen from genuine professional news sources. I would politely suggest that if you want real local news, you get it straight from the source rather than filtered through an aggregator. And Natalie comes back and says, yes, they are. They get their news from Sudbury.com and the Sudbury Star, and myself scroll through the news, those pages, to get people talking about news articles in the conversation. I feel it's a great concept that allows everyday people engaging and sharing their opinions about what's going on in Greater Sudbury. As more people learn about their program on CKLU, they are sending press releases directly to Sudbury News for their content as well, which is correct. Like, we're starting to get a bunch of people just sending directly to us so that we can announce different events and share the news right from the source, the people themselves. But he always gives credit to those other news sources, which is correct. It's right there on the screen for people to read and watch. Much of their content is focused on events or right now the elections. And they also talk about local sports. It's all volunteer run. I like listening to it on my drive to work. So you can really see her personal response. It's just very genuine. It's just, hey, this is what it is. And but I think, and the problem is, I went to Mike's Facebook page, and he was associated with the Sudbury Star and with Sudbury.com. So he would be basically in that industry, like local journalism industry. So maybe feels, I'm just guessing, I have no idea. And I'm opening this invitation to him right now. If he were listening, or someone who knows him, I could also message him, which I should. Just say, I saw you made a comment. You're welcome on the show anytime, just like anyone. And I'd love to have you on. And obviously you have a different point of view. So that's even better, because we'd love to have a different point of view to talk about different things.
I'd pay to watch that.
Yeah.
that'd be so much fun to watch. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is an open invitation right now to Mike Whitehouse. Come on the show, have a conversation. Obviously, if you've been involved in journalism, you understand the local issues and concepts, and you've wrote about them, and you got your finger on the pulse. So it'd be great to have you with your opinion on what's going on in Sudbury News.
Yeah, and your opinion about like what's stealing and what's stealing the news. Like I'm really, really curious, because it's just mind blowing how we can live in the same city and have completely different views from each other. It's actually really interesting and it makes a really interesting show.
Yeah, well, Miles just wanted to make sure. He says, don't get me wrong, I don't agree with him. but he was
it's okay
saying,
if you did.
yeah, and it is okay if you did. Yeah, he makes a point, and other people have points of view. And I just want to also share with everyone what our website is, because he mentioned something interesting. He says, politely suggests you want real local news. You get it straight from the source rather than filtered through an aggregator. Well, you know what an aggregator is? So our website actually is a news aggregator. And I don't know. So one of the things I wanted to do with the show is have, our opinions on what's going on, look at the issues in the city, how we feel about it. But another thing was, when I go on local news, and I saw a lot of comments a lot of times, it's like, hey, aren't you a local news source? You have all these other cities, and you have national and provincial. Where's the local news? There's this guy, Peter Glass. He just comments on every single thing on Sudbury Star's Facebook page. And that's what he was saying over and over. He's like, where's the local news? So what I did is I thought, you know what? That's true. You got to go to CTV Northern Ontario News, CBC Northern Ontario, which barely shares anything, maybe 2 stories a day. And then Sudbury.com, which does probably the best job for local news in town, Sudbury Star. And so you got to scroll to get every once in a while a Sudbury story. Well, I thought, you know what? What if I had a website that just grabbed all of the local stories from each of and that's it. It was only Sudbury.
You're like a
else.
Google.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Google doesn't create its own content.
No.
It steals other contents.
Well, they got to speak to Mike, I think.
Stealing.
On that.
should have Peter on.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, for sure.
I have to get Journey ready for school.
Yeah, no
but
problem, Nick.
We need to continue this conversation when I don't have Journey in the morning because there's other topics we need to talk about,
For
you
sure.
know, about like people coming on the show. And just because a certain individual has an opinion about something, that just means you have the exact same opinion. This is just mind blowing to me how people view things, you know, like if someone said something 5 years ago, oh, well, that's who they are.
Yeah, for sure. Brian said we should have Peter on the show. He could really stir the pot.
Who's Peter?
Peter Glass. He comments, if you go on Sudbury Star's Facebook page, he's basically the only guy who's always, there's some other people, but
You'll know him. He's all
Oh, I love it.
It's a big wall, all in
pretty
caps
cool.
lock.
Oh, so he's like a local celebrity. That's hilarious.
Wow. On Facebook for sure.
Passion.
That's funny.
Well, thanks, Nick. Appreciate
I'm
it.
gonna listen to CKLU, so I'll be listening.
Okay, we'll see you soon. Ciao. So yeah, with that, then I'll share the screen here on the bottom, because we can do that now, is what our website actually is. So here we go. Oh, there it is. I was only going to put it on the bottom portion, but I guess I'll just show it in the full screen. Yeah, so here you go. You go there, and there's our homepage, and there's news feeds. So you got local news, so everything from every source. You have Sudbury.com. You have Sudbury Star here. Sudbury Star.
When you click the links, does it redirect to their website?
So watch this. So the Sudbury.com, the company that owns Sudbury.com, they're called Village Media. They originated in Sault Ste. Marie, and now they own like multiple news organizations throughout North America now, actually. So they're big enough to interview people like Peter Mansbridge. So they have a new podcast, kind of like this, but they don't want to do local. That's why we're doing local. They want to do larger information, interview celebrities and things. So they interviewed Peter Mansbridge. So watch, you click on it, like you said, and where does it go? It doesn't stay on our website. So basically, we are free advertising for Sudbury.com. They don't pay us for that. But if someone goes to our page and they find a story they like, it goes right to Sudbury.com. Their advertisers then get eyeballs so they can increase their revenues and all that stuff. So no, we're not out to steal anything from anyone. If anything, we're out there to support and to help the other news organizations that are out there. So that's that, I guess. There was another comment that was taken down from Natalie's page that said something about, a Nick was on this show, or that a Nick girl, you don't want to support this show because I saw on her Instagram that she was supporting the truckers. So this show is trucker sympathizers. So what do you have to say about that, Julia?
Well, I think that people like to categorize people, including myself. Sometimes we all do. Sure. But it doesn't help anybody when we simply write somebody off because we've stuck them in a category that we think is disagreeable. Mm-hmm. I don't think we get very far, and we just end up putting ourselves into an echo chamber. So I also supported the trucker convoy, and I went to Ottawa and, in fact, brought my baby with me. I lurked on the outside of it at first because I had heard so many things from the legacy media. So I sort of looked from the outside before I went in. From what I saw from the outside was not at all what was being represented in the media. And so I spent 2 days in Ottawa. And so maybe you can just lump me in there too. I think that, I said, I think that categorizing people just isn't helpful, and it doesn't help you to, curate your own opinion into a nuanced take that people might enjoy listening to.
And as you know, right now there's an inquiry going on about, how the federal government pushed back on on that movement, on that protest. And they're starting with, why the municipality allowed them to be down there in the first place. and I listened to the CBC coverage on it, and I found the same thing as you, as somebody who is interested in unbiased media. And once you start getting into this divisive division of identity politics of, oh, you're that, you're this, you're in this box, you're in that box, and then people start looking at things through that lens. Unfortunately, some news outlets, including the one I was listening to on the way to work this morning, were covering it, and it's almost like, oh yeah, there's only one side. There's only one side. Don't worry, nothing here. We'll just tell you the news. We'll tell you there's only one side. That's it. Thanks. Move on. And that's all they say.
I, even being there and trying to share my experience with people when I got back and tell them what I personally experienced, I found that was difficult as well. Nobody wanted to hear it. And they said, oh, well, you just didn't see it and you just weren't there when it happened. And
because I saw it on CTV. I saw it on CTV, so you must have not seen what I saw. This is what got me one time. I'll just share one thing, and then I'm going to just segue with Miles' comment about he has family watching the show sometimes, and they said, maybe there's too much rambling on things, which is true. We get into things. We talk about a lot of stuff, and they might have said, well, just a lot of talk. Maybe we should just get to the news. Maybe there were some things that didn't interest them, right? And so this show is a show in development. We haven't really honed it. It's not because we don't have people. We're not paid, for crying out loud. We have maybe 15 minutes in the morning to get ready, and then laptops don't work and things don't work and whatever. And so it is what it is. We deliver it the best we can. And then, yes, we try and unpack it. And unpacking it isn't the easiest thing to do either. But yes, so I agree with Miles on that. We are getting to some news here as well. And Julia, you're going to let us know when you have to go as well, too, right? Because you might have to leave us.
I'm doing okay for now.
Okay, cool. You just
I'm
let us
listening
know.
for my babies to hear when they wake up.
Appreciate it. So Brian was saying everyone is allowed an opinion until it offends someone. Kind of true, I guess, but opinions could offend. And then what are you going to do when what if someone didn't mean to offend at all, but it still offended someone, right? So that gets a little bit murky in there, and I'm not sure if that's what you meant too, Brian.
But offense isn't an argument. So if you're offended, you have to say why. Being offended just in and of itself isn't enough.
Yeah, and I just try not to be offended. First of all, that's a really good place to start. Try not to be offended, because what does that do for you? Anyways, how does that help your life, being offended in any way, shape, or form ever for any reason? So it wasn't the truckers. If it wasn't for truckers, we would be in a very dark place. Interesting. Yeah, because there was a pushback to things that were going on that are arguable. The way the government handled that whole pandemic thing is up for debate right now. Now we can look back and debate about it, can't we? Or should we just not talk about it and everything they did was right? There's nothing that we can learn from it afterwards, or can we look back and say, hey, maybe could they have done one thing better or wrong? Maybe. And only way to get to that is to talk about it. And if you can't talk about it, you'll never get to it. And so the truckers at least helped people to look at it, talk about it, when I don't think the government was open to suggestions or anything like that at the moment. They were going ahead with what they were going ahead with. And some people said, I don't agree with what you're saying. And it is a democracy, right? Isn't that the whole idea of democracy? People sharing their, exercising their rights, let's say, to say what they feel is important to them, and then taking action.
Following my visit in Ottawa, of course, I kept up with the live feeds from the people that I knew were there, because I wanted to know what sort of resolution was going to come out, and I wanted to see it from both sides. So I was watching legacy media, and I was also watching live feeds on Facebook. What I thought was really interesting was most of the time, the organizers or people that were maybe a little bit higher up in, the chain of the convoy itself, they always just said, we're just trying to have a conversation. We're trying to present the data. We're trying to present information as it as it is, raw data, and we have our own doctors, we have, our own virologists, cardiologists, etc., that have this raw data and have examined it and have come to a different conclusion than what's being shared and disseminated across the legacy media. And that was really the consistent message that I saw the entire time was, can we just have a conversation? Can it not just be this one doctor that, she's the special one that only has the special opinion? There's other doctors, there's other experts. Can we talk to the other experts? That was what I consistently saw coming from the convoy. They held press conferences. Within the press conferences, they included their doctors. And so that's why I wanted to be a part of it. And that's why I still to this day support the movement, because it was a movement of nuance. And I still think even now, despite everything that happened with the convoy, we still are in a weird sort of limbo where conversation is still a little bit taboo.
Yeah, it's true. I know it's touch and go. And there is that culture out there. It's called cancel culture. We've all heard of that by now, right? They feel if you have a view that is different than mine, you're canceled. You're gone.
Yeah.
You're fired.
You're an extremist,
you're out of here.
Or
yeah.
There's some sort of if or whatever always after.
Yeah. And what ends up happening is that culture doesn't understand. It's like a cancer culture. It should be what it's called, because eventually that cancel is going to come for you. And if you start it now, there's no end to it. And eventually everyone's canceled. And that's really where it ends. But Miles says he doesn't agree with a lot of the trucker convoy either. It doesn't mean that he didn't. I don't like this news outlet or the people who may be sympathizers. Leaders look to divide people, and that's true with these issues. And that's what we're trying to diffuse, is that whole identity politics, dividing people. I think we have more in common than we have division, than we have not in common. And I think we're looking at our differences more than we're looking at our similarities as a culture, and that's dangerous. And so there's
dangerous.
Yeah, I think we all want to share, and we all have things that we feel passionately about, and we want to share. I think everyone wants to share their feelings. You shouldn't be allowed to share your feelings with someone else isn't allowed. Now, when you break a law, that's different.
I was going to say we're all the same in that we're all individuals.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So Jerome said his son took part in the experience, and it was a game changer for him. It was a wake up call. And he's just saying basically he thinks people should wake up to what's going on. And Miles says, yeah, there is a commission going on, like we talked about in Ottawa right now. And so they're trying to get to the bottom of it, but I don't know if it's 100% unbiased. But it's going on. We'll look at what they're doing anyways. We can discuss it. But one thing I noticed was the Prime Minister historically spoke to people who came, whether it was Indigenous people or Black Lives Matter or any of these particular people that came to Ottawa with concerns. He would speak to them. And that was one of the main things that movement basically were pretty not upset, but that was the issue. Like the Prime Minister would not speak to them. And so why did the Prime Minister not speak to them, but spoke to other organizations? And we can talk more about that in the future, right? But one of the things I guess we'll have to get to tomorrow is one thing, the blue box shortage in town. We were talking about that, right? We only have 1 minute left, and this is, I think, what Miles was talking about.
This is a big story.
covering the news. Blue box shortage in town, and that's because there's a supply chain shortage because of government policies, because of the pandemic. It then eventually led, which I said on Sudbury Sports Talk in 2019, my last show. I said I don't agree with what the government is doing to shut everything down. The economy is going to be the worst casualty out of all this, and you're going to see the effects of it. And I said that. I have it recorded, and I'll play it at some point on the show. And here you go. We can't even get blue boxes anymore because there's shortages. So good luck saving the environment and saving the planet. You can't even get blue boxes. But they did say you can use cardboard boxes if you want. So, but watch out when it rains, because your cardboard box, the bottom will come out in it, and then all that recycling will be on your lawn. But
So if we're able to use boxes now and we weren't able to use them before, I sort of wonder what that policy was all about anyways. And
Yeah.
to me, it seems like a nice, let's just keep it that way.
We weren't
Wouldn't
able
that
to
be nice?
use boxes before for some strange reason, and people said, why can't we? So for all the latest news, check out Sudbury News on Facebook. It's all there for you. If that's what you want to do, is you want to just check out credible sources and you don't want to listen to the show, and that's your choice, as Mike Whitehouse would suggest, strongly suggest. But if you do want to, kind of be part of the conversation, as all you all were this morning, and thanks so much for coming, and thanks, Julia, for being on your first time. I think you hit it out of the park. You hit it out of the park. Thank you very much for being on. And stay tuned now for Earshot Daily on CKLU. We'll be back same time, same place tomorrow. And Julia will be back at some time. We'll just have to figure out when that's going to be. Thanks, Julia.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow. Ciao.
This is Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.